We call this as bad form, Bigger. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name's Nick Demetto, the Kaz Australian Party Deputy Leader and also the member for Hinchinbrook. And today we're here for the Kaz Australian Party RE-KAP, where we do a roundup of what our Kaz Australian Party MPs have been doing this week in Parliament, but also out in the electorate. And this week, Bob's been very busy. He's been drafting legislation to basically have the People's Bank of Australia. So the People's Bank that he has been speaking about for some time would mean that Australia Post would be able to be activated as an agent for an Australian-owned bank. This bank would be able to loan money and also transit funds for Australians that are unhappy with the four cartel-style big banks here in Australia, giving them a bit of a run for their money, but also giving Australians an option of where they invest their money and who they loan from. And in particular in areas across Queensland and Australia that the KAP have been fighting for some time, a little bit of a level playing ground for those people trying to loan money up in the Gulf or in regional Queensland where the big banks don't seem to want to touch them. An Australian bank would mean that there'd be investment in regional Australia and Queensland where it's needed most by a bank that supports them.
We have petrol refineries in Australia. Don't quote me on the figures. They do 6,000 megalitres, right? China, when it builds a refinery, has 100,000 megalitres. They can get the money to build at economies of scale. And people say, oh, they got cheap labour. Well, they don't have cheap labour now. I mean, it's not a cheap labour country anymore. Why they succeed, as Japan did with the Zaibatsu and the government lending instrumentalities, they were able to build industries overnight. So you've got a bank that takes a bigger picture, that doesn't take a narrow, stupid, short-term picture. It takes a bigger picture, long-term picture. And when that was done, we were able to preserve a quarter of that industry that carried the economy of our state.
Also this week, Bob has been working hard off the back of the submissions for the Skills Summit that the federal government ran to try and attract people with the skill set to be truck drivers and haul-out drivers for the cane industry. There's a real problem right now. We can't get the sugarcane from the paddock to our mills because of this worker shortage. And Bob's been advocating on state and federal levels, trying to unlock those skill sets to try and bring people to the region. Because there's a real fear right now, not only because of the wet season, but also the lack of workers to try and get this cane crop off and to the mills. There's actually a worry that 20% of that crop may actually be left in the paddock if we don't solve this problem. So good work to Bob for working on this week. So this week, most people would be aware that Parliament has been suspended at the state and federal level, but that doesn't mean we're all off the hook. Those days will be actually tacked on the tobacco sitting weeks in the coming weeks before the end of the year. But this has given the state MPs a real opportunity to go spend some time in the electorate this week. Robbie Katter has actually been spending some time in Mount Isa, and he met with Mount Isa Council to address the youth crime problem that's gripping the city. And they worked together to try and come up with some strategies to try and curb the youth crime problem. Robbie also took the time this week to fly to Cloncurry and meet with the mayor and the local council to talk to them about what their needs are at a state government level. Robbie Katter also this week met with the Cloncurry ladies at Rainbow Gateway. Now, they're an employment agency working in Cloncurry that connects people with the right job, but also helps them re-engage with the community through volunteer work if they can't find employment at that time. While Robbie was in town, he headed also out to the PCYC to talk to the organisation out there about how they're going to spend their community benefit gambling grant fund, which they say are going to be used for repurposing and rebuilding a trailer they have out there for fundraising events. Robbie also took his plane all the way out to Greenvale. Now, Greenvale is a small little town just northwest of Townsville. And while Robbie was out there in Greenvale, he met up with constituents to find out how they could solve some of their more local-based problems. Also, just want to let people know that are up there listening, up in the Mareeba area, Robbie Katter and Bob will be actually holding a public meeting next Friday the 23rd. A public meeting to discuss policy ideas for the area, but also talk about how volunteers up there can get involved with Katter's Australian Party. That meeting will be from 10 a.m. on Friday the 23rd. If you want to get along to that, I encourage you to get involved. Also this week, Shane Knuth had an opportunity to spend some time in the Hill electorate, not having to go down to Parliament, of course, because of the Queen's passing. Now, Shane actually spent some time with the Diamond in the Sky Suicide Intervention Group. They had a carnival to raise awareness around suicide prevention. And once again, last week, of course, was Are You OK Day, and we put out a message saying we should all be checking on our mates, not only just on this day, but every day. If someone's not doing great, it's always good to check in and just see how they're going. It might mean the world to them. Well, Shane was also in the electorate. He stopped in at the Innisfail State School Fete. I'm sure he got a chance to have a Leamington or two, but it's a great opportunity, these school fetes, to get out and talk to people that might not usually come into the electorate office, to get a real finger on the pulse of what's happening. And Shane got to do that in Innisfail this week. Also this week, Shane spent Wednesday in Mission Beach, one of the most spectacular spots in the Hill electorate. An absolutely beautiful spot, and he got to catch up with the Mission Beach Arts Awards exhibition and the organisers who put that together. Some great artwork was displayed, and Shane got a chance to talk to some of the artists involved. A problem that's arisen this week is a problem with the peanut industry, and in particular the relationship breakdown between the peanut industry there in Atherton and Bega. Now, Bega is an Australian-owned company that spruiks buying and supporting Australian farmers and locally grown produce. The problem, though, this week, Bega cut the prices to local farmers and what they pay for their produce because of the ability for them to access cheap imports from Argentina. We call this as bad form, Bega. And Robbie Catter went a little bit strong this week, saying that we should boycott the brand in support of these farmers. Shane was a little bit more supportive of some intervention from federal or state government to help support the growers. Also this week, while Shane, Robbie and Bob were busy in their electorates, I was doing very much the same in the Hinchinbrook electorate. And this week we stood up for the Spanish mackerel fishers that are located at Lucinda Dungeness in the middle of the Hinchinbrook electorate. Now, Mark Ferner, the Minister for Agriculture and Fisheries, came out after what's been a long drawn-out battle and has announced that the department will be slashing the quota for the Spanish mackerel fishers in the East Coast fishery by 70%. This will also mean there'll be 2 3-week closures starting in October this year, over the next couple of years. But also, the total allowable take will be slashed to 165 tonne. That's going to be the total allowable take. Now, what this will mean that most Spanish mackerel fishermen will be down to about 20% of their usual take. This means that it's basically putting a line through their industry. Could you imagine running any other business and being told you can only do 20% of your usual business? This will be a slow death for those Spanish mackerel fishers that decide to hold on. But for the consumer, you should also be concerned as well, because the price of Spanish mackerel is about to skyrocket. Everyone that buys Spanish mackerel, whether it's from their local fishmonger or seafood store, or even a piece of crumb fish at the local fish and chip shop, is going to feel a pinch here. This is also going to affect the recreational fishers out there. Now they'll only be able to take 1 per person and 2 per boat when it comes to Spanish mackerel. And unfortunately, this means that it's going to affect everybody. Another issue that raised its ugly head this week has been the affordable housing problems we've got across Queensland. And finally, we've had a landmark summit being announced that the state government's going to use to address the housing crisis. Now, the first thing I'd like to say is I hope not only state government members will be invited to this round table. If they want to have an open, robust conversation about this and put all things on the table, regional MPs also from non-government parties need to be invited, as well as opposition members. This is how we're going to have a chance for us all to flesh this out. One thing that needs to be discussed at this housing summit is affordable housing and building affordable housing. And what we'll be calling on immediately is for the Palaszczuk government to suspend the adoption of the National Construction Code, which will see the cost of housing driven up by $30,000. Now, while we're trying to get people into houses, out of cars and tents and into affordable housing, this needs to be addressed before we go forward. Also this morning I'll be spending some time at the citizenship ceremony at the Hinchinbrook Shire Council Chambers, where we'll welcome a number of new Hinchinbrook Australian citizens to the fold. Congratulations and well done to each and every one of those. We look forward to welcoming you as our newest Australians. Also, ladies and gentlemen, while I've got your ear, I must encourage you to subscribe to our YouTube channel, but also like and follow our Facebook page and Instagram page if you're seeing this for the first time. Ladies and gentlemen, that's the CAP recap this week, letting you know what our Qatar's Australian Party MPs are up to. Thank you very much once again for tuning in. I hope you have a great weekend. It's actually my birthday on this Sunday, so I'll be taking Sunday off and hopefully getting out on the water and enjoying all the things we love here in North Queensland. Until next week, have a great time. Cheers.